so happy to see you. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all those good things. We're going to start by just catching up. So maybe we'll start ladies first. Tam, how was Christmas? How was the New Year in the beautiful little vineyard in Portugal? What'd you get up to?
-3, and we did have some snow, which was unbelievable for this part of the world. But there was a big storm that came in that sort of hit Portugal and Spain, lots of snow. So yeah, while I was watching what was going on in the UK, you up in Manchester had some snow, right, Chris?
We did.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
So it doesn't normally snow in Portugal?
I don't think so. Not unless you're up in Porto. But I'm down.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of the Portugal, so yeah, it's very unusual. But look, in one day we had like 4 seasons, which was unbelievable. But on Christmas Day we were outside drinking gin and tonics. I cooked the turkey in a pizza oven, which was interesting. It was fun. We had visitors pretty much the whole way through, pilgrims passing through.
Yep.
So we opened up the other side of the house. It was pretty fun, actually. Yeah.
When you say pilgrims passing through, do you mean like genuine pilgrimage? Pilgrims passing through?
Yeah. We did have one Irishman that came by. He's actually been in Australia for quite a long time. I won't mention his name because he probably wouldn't want that, but he's a bit of a wandering Irishman. He got out when he found out about COVID. He thought, I'm not staying here in Ireland cooped up. So he decided to start walking, and he walked pretty much the whole way through France, through Spain. He actually went to Compostela, and then from Compostela walked down towards, he's heading towards south of Portugal. And on the way, he stopped here.
Wow.
It was awesome. And he had so many stories to tell. It was fantastic. But he was in need of a very good meal and somewhere to stay. And it was great fun. So we had a bit of a sort of a Christmas gathering. And yeah, that was really nice.
That's really Christmassy, like genuinely opening your house to outsiders who haven't had a square meal in days. Wow. Oh, gee. Okay, Chris, your turn. Were there Tiny Tims everywhere and ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future?
You just stole my thunder. Yeah. We had there were so many Tiny Tims at midnight mass. We had to ask them to leave their crutches at the door when they came in. No, seriously, we had a great Christmas. It was a bit touch and go as to whether my whole family could get together because things are pretty bad here with the restrictions. But we did it anyway, and it was brilliant. We had a fantastic time. Great meal, lots of fun was had by all. And as Tam said, we did get some snow. We didn't have a white Christmas, but we did get some snow. And unfortunately, the day that we got snow, I picked that day to drive my motorbike from the north of England to the south of England. And so it was awful. I had to pull over probably as a journey that should have taken 4 hours, took about 6.5. I had to pull over and warm my hands up under bridges and all sorts of things. It was an adventure, Tom.
There you go. And are we all happy with 2021 so far? I mean, I don't think the world's necessarily a better place. And that's why I was in a funk when I went to bed on 31st of December 2020 because I didn't make it. I fell into bed thinking, you know what? I've just got this horrible feeling in my gut that I'm going to wake up and I'm just not going to feel much different. And I woke up on the 1st of January 2021 and I didn't feel much different. So it's been a real effort for me to get this far and go, 2021, we can make something of it. But what are your thoughts so far? Tam, ladies first.
I confess that I didn't make it to 12 o'clock and I went to bed.
Yeah,
I had some wine. I wish people happy New Year. And I was kind of looking forward to, because I had a birthday, you see, the day after. So I was kind of preparing for that. But otherwise, no, New Year was very quiet affair. And it's the first time in ever, really. Normally what we do is we do champagne and 12 grapes. So on every chime, you take a grape and you drink, and then you take another grape and you drink. And by the end, you've got a mouth full
of grapes.
Of grapes, and you just start laughing, and grapes go everywhere, and champagne. But no, we didn't do that.
Why not? That sounds awesome. You must be bored of that if you do that every single year. You fun-loving alcoholic people.
Well, I think it was because I've been chopping wood all day because it's
Yeah.
freezing here. So I was just absolutely exhausted. And I thought, you know what? It's just another day. It's just another day.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Chris, what are your takes?
Okay, so I flew the flag for team lounge room chats, and I managed to stay up till midnight in my undisclosed location with the people or not that I may or may not have been socializing with, and then but I did actually, I was very well behaved by previous standards, and so I was probably in bed by 1. And managed. It was a good start to 2021. I got to mass on the first. It's probably like the first thing that was done that day, and that kind of I have ominous sort of what's the word feelings about what this year might hold in store for us. But it was, I have hope nonetheless, and it was a good way to start it. It was positive, So yeah, I think it's going to be a very tough year for a lot of reasons, but I had a good start to that year. To this year.
What a way to start. And maybe just on that point, if I could ask both of you, like Tam, how did the little Catholic community where you are get through Christmas and the New Year, etc.? You really feeling the impact of lockdowns? I don't actually know if I've had an in-depth discussion with you on how you are feeling the COVID impact where you are, but do you notice that in terms of getting to mass, etc., things like that?
What restriction? What lockdown?
Yeah, COVID related. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, okay. I like that. Okay.
Okay, so the Portugal, they're just ignoring it, and I'm ignoring it because I don't look at mainstream media. So I've told all my neighbours, please don't tell me when there's any restrictions about going out, because obviously COVID is really, really rampant around about, I think it's 1:00 on Sunday afternoon, right through to the next day when you're not allowed to go out, because that's when it's deadly. I just don't ask. I go to mass whenever I want to. I go wherever I want. Police just wave me on. They see the English number plates and they're like, she has no idea. And I'm like, I don't know. Right. So that's how I'm working it. And, we've been so lucky. The little community in Fatima where there's mass, people just do what they want. There's no masks. And yet other people are wearing masks in their cars on their own, which beggars belief. I just cannot understand.
Well, that's mandatory in Brisbane, isn't it, Tom?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I just want to say something though. There is no way you're wearing a mask because look at the tan on your face. There's no line marks there. Can we just stop for a minute?
She's not talking about me, Tom.
I was going to say that UK sun.
That's right.
Deary beat. No, I've worn a mask for the first time. Quite funny because there was a very intense 3-day lockdown, and then the mask mandate has extended for a certain period of time, and who knows how long into the future that's going to extend. Once they start these things, normally, there's a precedent for them not ending anytime soon. But I thought I'd do the responsible thing and pick one up, not sure what the vibe was going to be like out there. And I went to the shop and I had it in my pocket. I thought, I'm not going to wear it if I don't have to. And I walked in and I had to. It's really, I've never seen anything like it. Yeah. So today was the 3rd time I've worn it out and about. But the funny thing is, out where we are, and sort of some people think we sort of live in the sticks. We live next to the Mount Crosby State Forest, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Tracks, hikes, little creeks, mountain climbs, etc. And when the lockdown was at its most intense, I thought, when I say most intense, this is a 3-day lockdown in Brisbane, which you really didn't notice. But for if you, we're going to go somewhere, you had to put a mask on. So for all those people in like Melbourne, the UK, Europe, who have really felt this, no, I'm not complaining, but it was an interesting experience. But I've gone out and I'm literally on a hiking trail, not expecting to come across anybody. And the one or two people that I came across, whether or not they were on horses, whether or not they were on mountain bikes, let's say, they were all in masks. And I think we all thought the same thing. We were looking at each other, and I won't disclose. I may or may not have had a mask on at the time, but they did. And we looked and we just thought, this is weird. This is weird because we're like out in the forest and there is nobody here. I wasn't expecting to see you. You weren't expecting to see me. And we're wearing a mask. So crazy world we live in, but who knows? Who knows? So, Chris, what about you guys? How did the Catholic community where you are battle through Christmas, New Year, etc.?
Well, I think it was basically business as usual. We've got some heroic priests who go out and do their job, but obviously they're giving the last sacraments out and things like that. So, how did things go for us? Well, we had a beautiful, albeit very simple, midnight mass in the chapel that I attend with my family in Manchester. But apart from that, people have been pretty good. I think we're quite lucky. There's a few. I don't want to call them loopholes because you never know who watches these things. But there's a couple of the government in their benevolence has allowed that people who have exemptions or medical conditions don't have to wear masks where people normally do, for example, in supermarkets. So unfortunately, myself and pretty much the entire traditional Catholic community have medical exemptions, so we can't participate in the mask wearing, which is a real shame. But we have to wear, well, you don't have to, but they strongly advise that you wear like a little lanyard with an ID card or a little printed off card to say that you're exempt so that people don't treat you meanly. And so I have duly got a yellow star, which I've sewn onto my jacket. No, I'm only kidding. But that's what it feels like. It feels like, so I've been challenged in supermarkets because I won't.
Wow.
I won't wear the lanyard, and I won't. I can't wear the mask, and so. People have been like, you can't come in and you need proof. And I was like, what proof would you like? Like my medical history? Or no, you just need the lanyard. And like, and that's proof. So it's getting pretty like sort them out. The people that are complying and the people that are exempt. So it's luckily they don't have the manpower to enforce this nonsense at the moment. So what they're relying on is the public to actually enforce it for them. And quite recently, I guess just to wind up my little spiel, that we've seen a lot of big companies come out, banks and supermarkets in particular, saying if you don't wear the mask and you're not exempt, then you're not coming in, you're not buying food, you're not having a bank account with us. So it's getting pretty nasty here. So that's where we're at.
That's interesting. That leads to all different sorts of discussions because not long ago, I was having a conversation with a friend on relation to, how do you deal with this? You've got your libertarians, which are coming out in full force and, don't tread on me. And then you've got people who are taking a more, is this religious persecution? What is actually going on here? How do we deal with this? And it's interesting sort of looking at it from Brisbane because this is the first time I think we've had anything sort of like this. And I think my approach is the minute it becomes evident that it's sort of, if it becomes evident that it's directed religious persecution, then you need to take a stand. But I think what I would hate to see happen and what I would sort of caution, in my own opinion, people against is cutting off your nose to spite your face. If if it is threatened that they will take away your rights to the sacraments if you don't do these pain in the neck little things that they're mandating, I would say do the little thing.
Okay, I'm going to jump in with
that would be. This will be interesting. Okay,
and just while it's in my head, and then I'll hand over to Tam because I know she wants to talk. So, speaking from the benefit of experience, having been locked down now for months, it's not a direct religious persecution. No, it's an assault upon truth. It's assault upon the virtues, so justice, things like integrity as well, but also mercy. So they've got is this false notion of what truth is, what mercy is, what justice is, and they are enforcing it on us. And so you give them an inch and they will take a mile. So for example, there are movements in certain European countries, notably in Denmark and Italy, where people en masse have just said, we're not doing this. Tam just mentioned Portugal, and the government has had to wind back. But in countries like the UK, where everyone is very compliant, they're going mad, they're going wild.
Yeah.
So I think in Brisbane, which your history and culture lends itself to, compliance, British jurisprudence, things like that. I think people will you'll see the same. You've had your little 3-day lockdown. The next time it'll be longer. You'll see more and more restrictions over time. They all seem to be going from the same playbook. And yeah, the stats don't add up. There's so many holes in it. And one thing that last thing I'll mention is, if they say they're not going to do something, let's say make masks mandatory or whatever it might be, you can guarantee that in 2 or 4 weeks, that's the usual time period here at least, they will do that. So that we've seen that time and again over the last year. So that's where I think it's an assault upon truth. And so in terms of yeah, I agree with you. You've got to be prudent in how you react to it, but you've got to realize that this is a them and us scenario now. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think everybody is of that opinion amongst my friendship groups, but more and more people think like that now. Anyway, I don't know what Tam has to say on that.
Tam?
I'd like to just confirm exactly what Chris has said, really. I'd go even so far as to say that there's something malevolent really going on. The reason I'm mentioning that is because we know that there are dark forces. Am I still? Yeah, you can hear me.
Yeah, dark forces.
I don't want to go into being really pessimistic because it is the new year, but let's face it, there is something, that's going on, that has been going on for some time, and we only have to look at Fatima and all the previous prophecies, which are completely and 100% approved. Our Lady of Good Success, Our Lady of Fatima, obviously, Our Lady of Akita. Everything's been pointing in this direction for a while. So yes, you can go down, are Catholics being persecuted? I think Christianity is, but mainly it's an infringement of our human rights. And we do have to fight it in certain ways, in pockets. And I know that Chris is probably part of this, and I'm sure you are too, but I'm getting a lot of information through information basically online where, people are sharing stuff about what's really going on in certain cities. I mean, only today, one of the biggest things I've seen is in Italy, where restaurant owners are all up in arms and they all went out. 100,000 restaurants are all open. And then these great videos are coming out. And this is not going down the mainstream media, but these videos are going out of restaurateurs saying, out to the police, get out. And they're getting out. And if we just can fight in small pockets like this, bit by bit, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. We don't have to say it's all doom and gloom, because there is, like I say, pockets of resistance. So we do have to sort of fight. It is to do with general humanity. I mean, it's 1984, isn't it?
It's 2021. Boom. Sorry.
That's 1984 part 2.
Yeah.
Now it's really bad. That's really interesting. 2 really, really strong opinions. And I would just say at this stage, and maybe it's just my personality, I am not I don't think I'd be as brave or confident in my position as both you are. I think I'm not going to say I disagree. And I think my difficulty is I've got my thoughts up here. And then it's what to do with those thoughts out here. When it seems to be chaos, you can't trust anything. And you go, how do you navigate this really, really complex thing? So if I woke up on 2021, January 1st, and felt something, it was uncertainty.
Yeah.
It was looking around and going, not 100% sure what to do here. But, on the positive side, it's nothing new to us. I just came back from an Ignatian retreat. So 2 weeks ago now, and maybe I've still got a very, very small part of the benefits lingering around. So
Tam, it's not a tan, it's a halo. That's what we can see.
Oh,
No.
it is.
It's, hang on.
Oh no, it's white
alcohol.
Wine. It's white wine.
It's alcohol. Yeah. Don't beat around the bush. Yeah, there is no halo, and that is all alcohol, and that is alcohol.
Brisbane heat.
In Brazil, yeah, I do. Look, I try my best. But look, I think that's it. So whilst people may disagree on some details, I think there are some fundamentals that everybody would agree on by virtue of being Catholic, and there's certain fundamental principles that you cannot, in any circumstance, compromise. The minute those principles appear to be challenged, you must stand and defend them. And in an environment where you don't know necessarily what to do, you put your faith in God, you keep moving forward, and you, I don't know. Anything you'd like to add? What are your thoughts, Chris?
I think, Tam mentioned the human rights. I mean, I guess, let's be specific. We're talking about the rights that we have under the natural law. Not the arbitrary declaration of human rights that came out, I don't know, in the last 100 years, the last 50 years. But yeah, I think the way to deal with this is to recognize what it is. What's happening. It is disorientating. It is, and there will be different situations at which you will react differently to, and you might not always be consistent, unfortunately, because there's such a moving target, or the rules change every week here, sometimes every day. So what you might have been okay with doing a week ago may no longer be applicable, and so you've got to get into this mindset of actually really being sure of your base and being sure of your principles, because they are being challenged. And so the way to do that, I would say, is doubling down on the spiritual life. I go to mass at the moment, and I go to mass regularly, like during the week. Try and do as much reading as possible, as much meditation, just getting the basics in order, and then and also keeping fit, keeping regular hours, not staying up too late, things like that. I'm not so good at the latter, but so I think those focusing on what we can control helps us to react to what's happening out there, and we do receive graces to help us in these challenging times. And finally, I would say, in terms of the bigger picture, Tam mentioned Our Lady of Fatima. Now, I was talking to a friend about this last night. What was one of her main messages was that communism, the errors of Russia, would spread throughout the world, and that's what we're seeing today. And we've got to recognize that. Like, what the states are imposing upon us, state governments are imposing upon us, is nothing other than out-and-out socialism, out-and-out communism. So we've just got to recognize that, and then look from the lessons of history. I've just read The Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn. Really great book, because it's a playbook, and a lot of things in there, 1984, things like that, you see a lot of it, so that helps you kind of, okay, how do I navigate this modern world? Anyway, that's my take.
Wow, what a soliloquy, by reference to Tam as well. Tam, do you have anything to add?
Only like one thing, apart from the fact that I agree with 100% with what Chris said. I think the only way to navigate 2021 is just more wine.
Hey, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Lose your memory and do it doing something you enjoy.
Yeah. That's the other alternative. I forgot that bit.
Just to reinforce what Chris said, I found that getting yourself outside and getting lots of fresh air, spirituality. I haven't been able to meditate as much as I'd like to, and I'm still sort of working on that. So that's my sort of focus this year. And I think if people try and get to the sacraments as often as they can, if they can, but also the rosary is the 100% where it's going to get you through. And really, lastly, it's wine. That's my own.
But just to draw on that, I was sort of flippant before when you said wine and I said getting drunk, but you immediately said something about going out and working. And I assume that would have something to do with the vineyard. And one of the things I loved, and when I did my interview with you, Tam, we alluded to it when talking about wine, but there are so many different places we could take it, and maybe we will, time permitting, in another interview. But just the lessons and the metaphors that you can draw from wine, resistance, deep root systems, digging down to be able to get the nutrients and the best vines. You're the expert here, but my understanding is some of the best vines have the deepest roots.
Yeah.
And those roots have to work and dig. And so it's sort of be resistant and be tough. And
you know, with those canes, they're always moving about with the wind, with the rain, with the snow, with the whatever. But if you do have good foundations, and if you have that rock, you can wake up in another year. We could go through another year of this, but nothing changes in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, because you know where you are and where you need to be. And that's all we got to focus on, I think, is not worrying about so much what's going on out there, and get off mainstream media as well. I just want to put that in as much as possible.
Yeah, look, I would agree with you 100% on that, because firstly, I'd agree that I don't think you can trust it at all. It's frightening. But the second thing that I think, I'm not sure how much thought people give to it, it's truly depressing. Like, if you spent your whole day with that as your point of references for what's going on out there, I think that would have serious consequences, negative consequences on your mental health. It is just depressing, the amount of horrible news that is just cycled through that. So, no, I agree 110%.
It's
get rid of it.
Sorry, Tom. It's fear-mongering, and I would add that if we all, the entire population, turned off mainstream media tomorrow, or pre-COVID, let's say, I'd say 99% of the population would have no idea that there's anything going on, because people aren't dropping dead in the street. You know, that is a real plague, right? The Black Death, that was a real plague. People drop dead. Your neighbours drop dead. Yeah. Right? This isn't that. No, by no stretch. So mainstream media has a lot to answer for.
That's interesting you say that, because on a slightly different angle, I'm talking to one of my siblings who's over in the States at the moment, and they're dealing with issues that are just a little more broad than just COVID. You know, don't get me started. I was away for a week and thought the world couldn't get any worse, and came back, and all of a sudden, not referring to anything in particular, but, you know, just heard this array of news that I just put my head in my hand and went, I can't believe this all actually happened. And it's only it's the second week of 2021. But I was talking to my brother over there, and he said, you know, I don't mind it. He said, my life is okay. I look outside, the sun is shining. I'm sure it's a little different, but it's different everywhere. But he said, you know, it's not as bad as they paint it. The world, you know, where I am in other places, you know, he said the world doesn't look to be imploding. And so, you know, I 100% agree. Just lose the fear mongering. You got to have hope. You got to have faith, and then you got to have that compass to direct you. And, you know, the Catholic faith is not a bad compass to give you that sort of direction. So here's to that. Let's do something, unless you have any closing remarks on that. Let's do something that's a little bit different. And I'm not sure if I've given you any notice for this, but I thought it would be an interesting discussion. I'm going to go around to both of you, and I'm going to get you to recommend a book. We've just been talking about getting rid of the mainstream media, other things, becoming maybe a little bit more introspective, contemplative. So I'm going to start with Chris, because Tam is looking like I've caught her unaware. So we're going to give her more time. Chris, if you were to recommend, or, you know, whether it's your favorite book or a book that has had an impact on you, or something you've stuck your head into recently that you would recommend that somebody read, and you're not allowed to say the Bible, what would that be?
I can't. It's too hard to just pick one. But I think, I've got a few ideas, and I had a notion, because I know you kind of vaguely suggested you might ask us about
and it
books
doesn't have
or
to
films.
Secret. It doesn't have to be religious.
No.
It's
Well,
okay.
I have cunningly prepared all of the books that I'm currently reading, because I'm one of those people that never has just one book and finishes it. I've got like 10 books on the go and I never finish any of them. But I think to segue from what you just said about like this isn't just COVID problem, this is a wider problem.
Where's she going?
She's going to a bookshelf. So I'm currently looking at this. This is The Servile State by Hilaire Belloc, with a bunch of friends, and we are studying this actually. And it's basically a manual. Well, not a manual. I won't go into too much detail, but basically in this book he says that the industrial system that existed in the West, in England he's talking about, 100 years ago, was inevitably going to lead to a system of modern style slavery where we would all become slaves. And he defines what he means by slaves, because that's quite a loaded term. And he also suggests a solution, which he terms distributism. He was the father of distributism with Chesterton. So that's a fantastic book. If you're a bit of an intellectual, you like economics, I'd recommend that. I will leave that one to last. This one was recommended to me by it's just a red book. It's called The Man Who Got Even with God, and that was recommended by our mutual friend in New Zealand. Thank you if she's watching. You know her, Tom. You've yeah. So that I've almost finished, and this is a story of a cowboy in the US who was a bit of a lad, and spent his days herding cattle and doing what cowboys do, and then he had a bit of an epiphany moment and went and joined a monastery, and became a really holy guy. So much so that his fellow monks wrote a book about him. So that I need to finish. I'm probably about 20 pages off finishing, so that one's nearly over the line. Another one which was recommended to me was an author called Daphne du Maurier. This is a great book. This is just a bit of escapism. This is Jamaica Inn. So that's fantastic. That's just, like I said, a bit of escapism. It's about smugglers and pirates in Cornwall. And then finally, this one's a French book, but I think there is an English translation. It's written by an Italian woman. It's very flowery and pink and blue, but it's Épouse-la et meurt pour elle, which means marry her and die for her. And then it's True Men for Women Who Don't Have Fear. And it's basically, she's written one for blokes and one for women, which is the pink version. And it's like men are from Mars and women are from Venus. But it gives you all the inside scoop on the opposite sex, and it's hilarious. So that's
wow.
Yeah, I've got loads of other recommendations, but that's what I'm currently
I'm sweating.
reading. One book. If I had to just call out one book, which is my favorite, I think, of all times, it's Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh.
Evelyn Waugh.
Yeah. And,
do you ever read any of his other stuff?
Yeah, I read Sword of Honor last year. I read it and listened to it on Audible, and it's just fantastic. Yeah. I mean, that vies almost with you have to be of a certain temperament, I think, to read Waugh. But
he's a bit of a groovy guy. I've read some of his other ones, and I found them quite funny. Yeah. So that was the thing, because you read Bridehead, and it's very I'm not sure austere is the word, but it's serious, it's thought-provoking, it's deep. And then I think it's called The Loved One.
I can't remember. I've not read that.
Yeah, it's a comedy, and maybe I haven't quite got that title right. I'm just sort of trying to cast glances. There's a big bookshelf here, which I'm sort of scanning. I'm trying to see if I can see it.
No, I know what you mean, because the thing go on.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say completely contrasting styles. So I've read two of his comedies, and they're quite funny. They're sort of dark humor as well. So I'm like, this guy dark. Actually, yeah.
So Sword of Honor is probably his best comedy, I would say, because Brideshead's not a comedy at all, but it's
not very funny.
No. I wouldn't read it if you want a bit of light relief. But Sword of Honor, it's actually 3 books, so you have to have some stamina for it. It's about a guy who's about 40 when the Second World War starts, and he's a bit of he's at a stage in his life where he's got a bit stale. His wife's left him, and it's about his story through the Second World War. And there's dark comedy, there's love, there's religion, there's everything in there. But what you've got to know about Waugh is that he changes across the period of the life that he lived. So his writing becomes more serious and becomes more deep So if you read some of his earlier works, you might even be scandalized or shocked by what he writes. But the later stuff is like it's pretty solid. But yeah, so Brideshead Revisited, Sword of Honor, those two of my favorites, I think.
Okay.
And just to finish off, I heard you mention the Silmarillion on one of your other talks. I listened to that last year, towards the end of last year on Audible. Absolutely loved it. It's fantastic.
Don't steal my thunder, man.
Sorry, mate. That's your baby. So that's what I'm currently reading. Those are my favorite books. Over to Tam.
Tam, what do you got for us?
What I'm going to say is I'm a bit like Chris. I have a lot of books on the go. Unfortunately, the one that I haven't quite finished is Infiltration by Taylor Marshall. Now, whether or not he's got all his facts straight or not, it's a bit like Windswept House, I find. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. Okay, so the only other thing I'm doing a bit of spiritual readings is the Alphonsus Liguori. I find when I'm feeling a bit sad, I do The Power of Love by Fulton Sheen. That's quite good. I'm trying to read The Hobbit again because I want to go through with my nephews and get them into that. And then I'll probably work my way up to Silmarillion. I can't even say it, but the other one that I do like as well is Distributism. I think that's really important, and I've been reading and dipping into that now and again. But if I had to sort of recommend or tell you which ones I like books-wise, there's a trilogy, Ellis Peters. I don't know if you've heard. It's a little bit about during the 13th, 14th century, war between Wales and England. It's fantastic. Also, have you ever heard of Owen Francis Dudley? It's the Monk series, which basically looks into the problems of happiness, and it sort of takes on communism, and it's just a really exciting sort of crime series. And for me, he's probably the best, Owen Francis Dudley. And lastly, I'll just say, I think you just got to go with the old chestnuts, Chesterton, Belloc, and I trying to read those at the moment as well, getting a few more in there. Necromancer was recently that I read.
Necromancer sounds spooky. Who did that one? What's that? Is it about Necromancer?
Well, Chesterton.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
But the reason I read it was because I've got some neighbours that have moved in just around, and they do healing with readings and Reiki and all this sort of stuff. And I thought I really need to do some research about what they're doing, because they're healers basically. They're English. Right. They just live around the corner. I've had them over for dinner. I didn't eat them, but yeah. It was
okay. For a second there, it sounded like you said you didn't eat them.
That's what I heard.
Wow, that's a good thing. So, that's terrific. There Tom, you go.
We need to hear what you're reading.
I've been working like seriously crazy overdrive in my mind to try and come up with something a little more spiritual and high level than what I was originally.
No, just say what you're originally going to say. Vox Populi.
No. No, but much worse. Look. We'll start. So you mentioned the Silmarillion, and look, I'm not even going to necessarily recommend that. It's a really difficult book for a lot of people. I think because you almost have to be willing to put up with arduous literary aridity. It's like reading an epic, these massive 500-page books, which are part history, chronology, and a million different stories and fairy tales and myths and legends sort of compacted into one book. It's enormous. But if you invest the time, it's such a brilliant book. It's such an interesting insight into the literary genius of Tolkien. It adds such a depth to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. You know, there's context there. And what's interesting is a little bit of background. So he wrote The Hobbit. Then my understanding is he actually wrote the Silmarillion. So he went backwards, and he took it to the editor, and the editor said, this ain't going to fly. This is too crazy. This is too big. This is not going to sell. So he then wrote The Lord of the Rings, and we know how that went. And then hop, skip, and a jump, he ended up, I guess, revising and publishing the Silmarillion, or someone did, and that ended pretty well too. But it's just, I think, given that he was a Catholic, there's this enormous debate which I think still takes place as opposed to whether the Lord of the Rings, etc., that whole Middle Earth world is an allegory for Catholicism. And look, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. His son has come out and said, no, it wasn't. And I think I've read somewhere where Tolkien has definitively said The Lord of the Rings is a Catholic book. What he meant by that, I don't know. I don't know what you could mean by that other than The Lord of the Rings is a Catholic book. But put all that aside, if you bring a Catholic lens to it, and to me that's the beauty of literature, there's just so much you can extract from it. But you do notice as a Catholic, you can definitely see the Catholic influence in the Silmarillion and that whole, the creation of Middle-earth. There's God, there's the fall, there's evil, and then there's this continual struggle. And it's quite explicit. You're reading the creation of Middle-earth, and you're going, this is almost too similar to a biblical theme that it's almost a bit ridiculous, but it's just tremendous if you can battle your way through it. But then it's this continual battle of good versus evil, tragedy, heroism, suffering. So heck, I'm done. Go away.
Yeah,
Go
well
away
done.
and
Well done.
try and read that book.
Well, I would say that anyone that's out there thinking this sounds like I might want to dip my toes in, like I tried reading that when I was a teenager and I gave up after the first few pages. I listened to it in its entirety, like within the last 3 months, and it is magical. Like listen to it while you're driving, listen to it while you're cooking, whatever you're doing. So much easier, and you kind of you just absorb it in, and those hard bits of arid literature which you referred to, they kind of just wash over you, and you take the key messages. So I would say anyone that struggles reading dense literature, listen to it.
Okay.
And the only other one, there's a few, and I'm not going to recommend them because I'm not going to recommend them. But the one I am going to recommend.
What are you reading? Are you reading like Tintin or something?
No.
Felix.
No.
Asterix and Obelix.
Asterix, yeah.
Evelyn Waugh.
Standard.
Evelyn Waugh, Decline and Fall.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a comedy. It was one of his earlier ones. So I went through a stage where I was going on an Evelyn Waugh binge, and I think it was called The Loved One, which is a sort of a dark comedy, guy that works in a funeral parlor, and it's pretty funny, I thought. And then Decline and Fall. If I end up accidentally scandalizing anybody by recommending that book, I apologize now. So don't hold it against me, but I remember thoroughly enjoying it at the time. That's all I'm going to say. On a completely different angle, because I've got a fetish for massive books that are really, really difficult to get through. If you want a Russian dark existential book.
Done it. Tolstoy or War and Peace?
Oh, which one? Crime and Punishment.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I did War and Peace, and I preferred Crime and Punishment. You see, I only read it so that I could say that I read it. People like, it's not War and Peace. And I'm like, well, I can actually comment on that because I've read War and Peace. Don't I look and sound like a complete loser?
You just lost any benefit of that information retreat. It's just gone. Halo.
Ages ago. Ages ago.
Where's that Halo gone? The Halo's gone.
What Halo? No. But yeah, would really, really recommend those. So there you go. I think that's been interesting. I think there's a lot there for people to go away, and if they're so inclined to take our recommendations, and at least it gets them away from the Facebook and the Twitters for a little while, as difficult as that can be. So
yeah, for sure. I think
or Parler, or what's
Or
the new one?
Parler.
Parler's not a distraction anymore. That's been mandatorily removed anyway. So Big Brother has sorted that one for us.
That's right. Although they may be up again, you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Crazy.
You said I think I don't know. I don't want to tread on your toes, as it were, Tom. But very quickly, maybe favorite films. I don't know. Do you call them films or movies?
Oh, movies, or whatever you call them. That's a difficult one because for me, it really depends on what mood I'm in. And that's a very personal one that I am happy to give my recommendation so as nobody holds it against me.
I actually regret bringing it up. I regret bringing it up.
No, but you see, this is the thing, because I'd be so happy to do it. Maybe it is for another podcast. I'd be all for it. But Lord of the Rings trilogy. Great, but there are lots of movies that I absolutely love that I think I could recommend, but maybe we hold that one over for another casty cast or a chatty chat.
That's a good idea.
Oh, terrific. What do you say, gang?
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Salud. It's been fun.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for having us, Tom, and always a pleasure.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it this time. First time was a bit
Makes
scary.
it sound like she didn't like the first one.
No, she didn't.
I didn't know. It was too scary.
I'm kidding. No,
Yeah, I feel much better now. Thanks.
Great. Tam's terrific, and really look forward to the year ahead working with you guys and getting some more content out there. And our website, we're working on our website, and it's looking flash. And hopefully in the not too distant future, maybe within the next couple of months, we're going to have something really, really spiff out there. And we're going to be putting all different sorts of content, written and visual and audio out there. So big things happening in the Lounge Room for 2021. Watch that space.
Brilliant.
Might leave it with that one.
See you, Chris.
Bye-bye.